guys, what's going on? Today we got a pretty big box, and this box is actually from Forgebrick. And as you can see, I have already opened it, and that's because it's sort of been sitting in my room and I've been waiting to make this video and release it. And I really couldn't wait to get into what was inside. So forgive me there for opening the box. But there were also some problems with my shipping company that I use, which is Canada Post, and that they have gone on strike, so I couldn't have done this video anyways. But now that the strike is over, get into the box and I can be able to ship the products out to you guys. So without further ado, let's go see what we have in the box right here. And you can see that there are so many things. I'm just gonna dump everything out. So yeah, some of these bags I opened and sort of looked at them, including this helmet right here. It looks absolutely amazing. And to make this easier, let me just grab one of everything that's available in the bags and sort of put them on the table so you guys can see exactly what the different items are that will be on the store. So I'm gonna pause the camera and do that right now. Alright, so here I have laid out one of each accessory so you guys can see exactly what we'll cover in this video, and as a little summary if you don't have enough time to watch the entire video. But for those that want to get into the detailed review, as always, I've added timestamps in the video so you can go through and watch exactly what you're interested in. That being said, let's get right into the detailed review. First up, we have the Poleaxe. This is a weapon that became more and more popular as armor started to develop, and it proved to be very efficient against heavily armored opponents. You can see that it was pretty versatile. You've got the long spike at the top, which allowed you to pierce through chainmail and even plate armor, and then you have a blunt edge here if you want to use pure force, and then of course you have the axe head here, which you can use just to slice. And not all of them look the same, so we have this other version of the Poleaxe here, but this one has a more rounded axe section here, and the blunt side has more of a beak. I also like how there's a disc here at the end of the head, which is actually for protecting the wielder's hands, so you can see that if someone strikes you like this, the blade will be redirected away from your hand, so that's pretty realistic. Next up we have a similar styled weapon. This is the Bec de Corben, or Raven's Beak. Pretty cool name, I have to say, and you can probably see why it was called that. That's because the back there was shaped like a raven's beak, and let's just take a moment to realize just how deadly that would be. I mean, with enough force, you're piercing through plate armor and going through chainmail, and the front there is shaped pretty well too. And I like the nails there, simulating the way that the head is attached to the pole. Next up we have our short and high impact weapons. So we have the Warhammer here. This version is pretty small and compact, which is oftentimes how they were. It conveys the general shape well and looks pretty nice. You guys know me, I'm a huge fan of the Warhammer, and I think this one is very good, especially with the grip there, which is painted in brown. You can even have the minifig hold the shaft all the way up to the head, so that's pretty cool. Next up we have the flanged mace, and these were common in the late medieval period and also effective against armor. The flanges, or the raised ridges, increased the focus of the force on the impact and made it easier to crush armor. The overall proportions are fine for minifigs, and the metallic finish is nice. And again, you can hold it up to the head there. This here looks to be a blunt mace or a club. Historically, maces with spiked or studded heads were often used against lightly armored opponents, so this is something that your town guards would have just to make sure no peasant ever thinks of even committing a crime. Here we have the Morningstar, which is a very iconic spiked mace. It was a devastating weapon that combined the crushing power of a mace with sharp spikes to pierce armor. This accessory looks quite good, with clear spikes and an appropriately sized head for a minifigure. I do like how the pole here comes in that same color as Lego sticks do, so it will fit right into most collections. Next up we got a couple of polearms here, one with a billhook head and one with a halberd head. So these are actually the same ones that I've reviewed in my previous Forgebrick video, so they can simply come off the pole as you would expect, and you can swap them out to be on shorter poles if you'd really like to. You can see that these poles are pretty interesting as well. They come in a darker brown than what we're used to with Lego's reddish brown, and fit nicely into the minifig's hands. Next up we have the dual colored lance, which will be useful for some of your mounted knights if, say, they were jousting in a tournament. And these come in black and white, blue and white, and red and yellow. They look awesome, and the heads are detachable, but I found that there seems to be an inconsistency with how easy it is to remove them. And what I mean by that is that on some lances it's easy to remove the heads, and on some it's pretty hard. In fact, I actually broke one trying to take it off, so if you notice that your specific piece doesn't seem to want to come off, it's best to leave it as it is, otherwise you'll end up breaking it like me. And the same thing goes for the halberds and bills we looked at earlier. not all of them come off as easy. And here we have some amazing looking banners. We got an English one, a French one, and a Joan of Arc banner, which is pretty awesome. You can see that there's a golden fleur-de-lis on the top of each banner, and that is an attachment which you can even put on other poles if you'd like to. The flags are on pretty tight, and it does look like some of them have been glued in place, so I wouldn't really recommend you guys try and take the individual flags off the poles, but I do like the overall shape of the flag itself, and again, the printing and paint job there is spot on. Alright, now moving on to the helmets. First up we have this grand bassinet with a visor, and it looks awesome. Of course, the visor does retract, and you can take it off completely and have the bassinet itself as a standalone helmet. And you can see that there's also a brown leather strap going around the edge of the helmet, and that is realistically supposed to be the place where your Aventail would attach onto. So this helmet is really best worn with an Aventail because, as you can see, it does leave the back of the minifig's head exposed. Luckily, we do have Aventails with this Forgebrick badge, and for that we have two types, one which is meant to be worn over some sort of body armor, and one which is worn straight onto the minifig's torso. And you can see that the one that is meant to be worn straight on the torso has a little sticker there, and for that we actually do have some variations in case you'd like to get an Aventail that's specific to your specific knight's colors. The Aventail attaches like so, but you do have to make sure it's perfectly aligned, and if you do it right, the Aventail should cover the minifig's neck completely. Then when we put the helmet on, the minifig is completely protected, so I'd recommend you guys use these grand bassinets in conjunction with an Aventail for the best look. Here we have another version of the grand bassinet, but this one has a torse, which is essentially a wreath that is worn on helmets which display the knight's colors. And you can see that this wreath in particular is black. The paint job is done so well on those little flower details all around the piece. A job well done, I have to say. And I do actually have a couple other versions with red and orange for you guys to choose from. This would be a cool helmet for some of your army officers who you want to be recognizable on the battlefield but protected at the same time. Next up we have a helmet that would be for your lower class foot soldiers, and it is actually a kettle helmet with a padded coif. And I love the fact that it's actually dual colored, so you do get that accurate representation of it actually being a separate piece of gear. It looks nice, though your minifigure would not really be able to turn their heads as much, so I guess that's one of the trade-offs. I also like how this helmet matches the brown torso printing of the figure there. That turned out to be quite nice. Moving on, we have something that I've been waiting to be made in the custom medieval community, and that's some Eastern styled helmets, and I think that this helmet is absolutely amazing. Again, I love the fact that the chainmail is in a darker steel when compared to the helmet itself. You can see that there's also an inscription going around the helmet, which is just amazing. And if the look of it wasn't enough, it actually comes with a detachable nose guard here, which just slides into that tiny hole there at the front of the helmet. So this technically makes him have two nose guards at a time, which I'm not sure is the most realistic thing in the world, but it does look cool regardless. We also have cloth pieces that we see worn by many Eastern styled warriors, and they come in black, dark green, and white. And the way they attach is quite simple. You basically just find the notch in the cloth piece and align it with the nasal piece on the helmet, and it fits on pretty tight so it's not going to fall off or anything. And I just love how this looks. It covers the inscription there though, but still, you know, it's always nice to have some overall accessory that can make your figures stand out from one another. That way you won't have an army made up of the same exact minifigure copy pasted a bunch of times. You know, there's beauty in variation, and I think this allows us to do that very easily. Next up we have another Eastern styled helmet, and this one is more fancy than the previous helmet we looked at. You can see that the inscription section of the helmet is golden, so this helmet would be worn by a higher ranking individual in the army. By the way, you could also put that same cloth piece on one of these helmets, and it does cover the gold section almost completely, if that's something you'd like to go for. And here's a quick comparison between the two helmets. I have also tried to attach the cloth piece to some other helmets, but found that it was too loose to stay on. So if you want to use the cloth pieces, it's best to use them exclusively on the Eastern styled helmets. Next up we have the Great Helm, and this is the same exact one that I showed in my previous Forgebrick video, but this time around it doesn't come with a torso, so it's more suitable for your regular men-at-arms. And I honestly think that it's the best Great Helm available in LEGO right now. I absolutely love the design of this helmet, and you can see just how it looks there when you combine it with an Aventail. Now let's move on to the different types of armors that we have. First up we have the Milanese plate armor, and you can see that it also comes with those flaps which we saw on the armor that I reviewed previously. except these here aren't removable, so you have the plus side of not worrying about them falling off. And let me just bring in their older Gothic armor, and you can immediately see how they seem to trim off the bulk on the newer one. And they also got rid of the shoulder pads this time around, and there's actually a specific reason for that, which we'll get into towards the end of the video. You can also see that the Milanese armor has a built-in Aventail, meaning you can wear all those helmets that we talked about without worrying about the gaps in the armor. You can also see that I have two versions of the armor here, one in the lighter steel and one in the darker one, so you guys can choose based on the printing on your minifigs, because some prints feature this lighter steel variant like this one on the yellow and black minifig, and I have to say I love how the color of the armor matches with the body printing, especially those pauldrons. Next up we have some hauberks, which were essentially a male shirt that also goes down to the thighs, and these are for our Eastern warriors, so we essentially have the same piece, just two different paint jobs done. So the one on the left, we just have the plain version with a steel disc on the chest there, and for the one on the right, it is painted in gold. Another thing I will point out are the belts, and they are actually a separate piece altogether which attaches onto the hauberk. And the idea is if you get different colored belts, you can swap them out. Unfortunately, they are on very tightly, and the one belt that I did manage to remove, I couldn't seem to put it back the way it was, it just kept falling out. So I would not recommend taking them off at all, because it will be difficult to put it back on. Here we have a couple more very similar hauberks, and the idea is this is what your Crusaders would wear, and the previous ones we just looked at are for the Saracens, so you can kind of gear everyone out with this armor. So anyway, we have two different styles here, one with a black belt and a gold cross, maybe for a noble, and one with a brown belt and a silver cross for your regular soldier. And here's a quick comparison of the armor on the figures. So we have the Eastern styled on the left and the European one here on the right. Next up we have an armor piece that I got just to review, so this one will not be available on the website. And this actually comes in two pieces. So we have the breastplate and this piece right here, which just goes onto the legs. I love the shaping of the breastplate and that V section there near his neck, which was actually implemented to stop arrows from sliding up towards the neck, so that's a very good inclusion. I also like how the two pieces fit together, it just feels very nice, and they were nice enough to include two of these, one in shiny silver and one in the darker variant, and you can see that the darker one has some purple lining there on the chainmail, and the lighter one has it in gold, which I prefer more, to be honest. It looks like a good nobleman's armor. Next up we have the most interesting pieces of armor in my opinion, and the most revolutionary out of this entire batch, and that is going to be the Pauldrons and Gauntlets. Taking a look at the gauntlets first, they look awesome. Just love the fact that there are knuckle details there, and the overall design is just amazing. And you might be wondering, well, how does this attach to the minifig's hands? Well, to attach it, all you have to do is take the minifig's hands off, slip the gauntlets in between their arms and hands, and the gauntlet fits just like a glove. Well, it pretty much is a glove, perfectly around the minifig's hands. I mean, this just looks absolutely amazing. And on top of this, their hands can actually turn at certain areas. Now, you're not getting the full range of motion, but this is really the best it could be. And the other piece that I feel like goes hand in hand with the gauntlets are the pauldrons, and these ones attach a little differently, which I know some people might not be the biggest fans of. The pauldrons come with a good amount of sticky tack, which you can use to essentially stick the pauldrons onto the shoulder of the minifigure, and if you use just the right amount, you can stick them on without any sticky tack being visible. And this actually allows something which was never possible before, and that is the amount of range of motion the minifig gets with these pauldrons on. Previously, pauldrons were fixed onto the body armor, which restricted a good amount of arm movement, making the minifig very hard to position into the specific poses that we would like to recreate. But now we can get the minifig to raise their arms pretty high, which is honestly amazing. You know, you can make it look like he's surrendering, or say if you need to raise their shield above their heads. And when combined with the gauntlets, it looks absolutely amazing. I can't wait to experiment with all my other accessories and see just how good I can make a minifigure look. Next up we've got the shields, and these are again similar to the ones I've briefly reviewed in my last Forgebrick video. So we have 4 types of kite shields now. We have this wooden one, which has a similar design to this round shield, which we've also seen before. This time around, you can see that some of the shields here actually have some dirt and scratch detailing, which is a very nice touch, making it look much more realistic. You know, you'd never have perfectly vibrant colors showing on the shields every time. there would always be some wear and tear. Alright guys, here I'll let you guys see some of the minifigs that I came up with using these accessories while I talk about my thoughts on this Forgebrick batch. First things first, I want to say that the weapons are amazing for the most part, other than the fact that some of the polearms can't be removed off the poles, so there is some inconsistency there. The armor, however, is top notch. The Milanese plate armor is just amazing, and again, it comes with a pre-installed Aventail, meaning you can combine it with any helmet for full protection. I do want to mention that the kettle helms and nacelle helms that we saw earlier are not compatible with the Aventails, so do keep that in mind. I also love how we now have the Eastern styled armor and helmets, which just look amazing. It's definitely a very good addition in this Forgebrick batch. And of course, I think these gauntlets and pauldrons mark a step in the right direction when it comes to the looks and functionality of a minifigure. Definitely the highlight of this Forgebrick batch. So yeah guys, if you're interested in picking these up, the link will be in the description. The stock is limited, so be sure to order fast so you actually get what you want. Also, if you guys have any questions about specific compatibility between these pieces and say some of LEGO's pieces, feel free to leave it down in the comments, or better yet, join my Discord server where I'll even be able to provide you with some more images based on your request. But that's all I've got for today. I really hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.